All right, tonight, let's get into it. So we're going to get into the water harvesting principles. Begin with long and thoughtful observation. This is also the #1 rule in permaculture. Observation, #1. I can't tell you how many countless hours I've spent in my own backyard just staring at it and looking at it, imagining it, envisioning it. Be like the water, as the Asian proverbs would say. And really look at everywhere around you and how water flows through. Be like the water. Think how water moves and how it goes through your yard. And even though we live in the Southwest and we go through these long droughts where we don't get much rain, then all of a sudden we get a big mondo storm that reminds you that, you know what, it does rain in the desert. And it can also, and if your property isn't built right, it could create a lot of problems, to be honest. And so our objective is to turn these drainage problems into drainage, solutions. But beyond that, just something like incredible, and a really you're taking this thing that can, that most of our society is built to shed it out to the street, get it out of here, get it, down the sewer drain, where our objective is to keep every last drop. And so when you're in your yard checking it out, really pay attention to how water flows, and then how you can help in the changing of that flow to optimize its usage. So you got to stare at your yard, y'all. Start at the top. Whenever a design principle #1, you got to start at the top of the watershed. So if we were out in country land and you're looking at your homestead property of 40 acres, when you're doing design, you're looking through how water moves through your property. And the first place to start is the greater watershed of which you are a part of, which is potentially some greater mountain that's close to you. Maybe you live near one. And you're going to look at the top of the mountain, would be the top of the watershed. Well, in an urban environment, I mean, we do, even in Phoenix, we are in a greater watershed. But for you specifically, with your little micro area, the top of your watershed is the top of your roof. And I can't remember if it's in the slides ahead, so I'll say it anyway. For every 1,000 square feet of any surface area, and in this case, we're talking about the roof of your house, every 1,000 square feet in a 1-inch rain event would accumulate 632 gallons of water. Okay, so we're talking a lot of water, way more than you realized. And now spread that over your entire yard, whatever the actual square footage of your yard is. Do that same coefficient, multiply by 0.632, and you'll get what for every inch of rain, you'll know how much is actually falling on your property. And then when we're talking about rainwater, or when we're talking about actual harvesting in tanks and things like that, then we're obviously talking about, hard surfaces like your roof. This is an opportunity for us to really use that water that oftentimes is causing massive problems for people, because not only is especially areas adjacent to homes, not only is the rain falling directly above on certain areas, then all those adjacent areas to the house, they're just getting downpoured on from the roof catchment as well. You're talking, double whammy, right? So a lot of homes around Phoenix have foundational issues because, it doesn't rain in Arizona, so nobody puts gutters up. Nobody, to be honest, even though they're supposedly graded to move the water to the front of the house out to the street, a lot of times that they're not perfect grades. There's a lot of dips and valleys, and then water sitting on the side of homes. And anyway, you get the point. So when you're looking at your house, I'm assuming you're here because you want to do this in your yard. So when you're looking at your house, you're looking at your roof. Go on Google Earth, go measure your roof out, and then measure each of the sides. Okay, I mean, you can measure your whole roof as a whole, but look at your roof as where they're pitched towards as sections of the home. And then that way you can have a better idea of where what part of your roof has catching which, how much water. And again, with these arrows on this screen right here, our objective is to move it off the roof, potentially into tanks, but through the landscape, and to try to keep every last drop on the landscape, unless it's some mega storm like a 100-year rain event that, okay, cool, well, the last overflow will be out there in the street. But if you're smart, if you're a smart desert boy or girl out there like I am, we want to maximize every drop that falls from the sky here in an area of the world where rain is, it's gold. So it's an essential part of our survival, obviously. Start at the top. Start small and simple, okay? Like when you get into permaculture, you start seeing like videos online of people who, regenerated a forest, or big huge land masses that are so inspiring, and man, I can't wait to do that too. But first, start small. Start in your own house, start in a section of your yard if that's what it takes, whatever it is, but just think small on this. So it's and you'll be surprised too when you really get into this how many little surface areas of your property are shedding water. Could be like a pool deck, and or sidewalks or pathways, areas that you don't have things growing but are accumulating water and then moving it. So not just roof spaces, but a lot of different areas of your property. There's opportunities for catchment. So again, think small. Spread and infiltrate the flow of water. Now, part of one of the big pillars of ecological design, permaculture, everything I'm talking about, is the idea to slow water, spread water, and to sink water. Okay, so slow it, spread it, sink it. This is number one thing, baby. You gotta really think that you gotta have that really downloaded in your mind when you're thinking about anything with water, with this design template. So the idea is to avoid erosion, and here in the desert, especially when the land itself has been degraded and been stripped of organic material, we have a lot of erosion issues. I mean, when you go out into the wildlands, there's massive, like, humans cause a lot of erosion issues. And in order to bring that back, it's more now, how do we take, when there is water, how do we slow it down, spread it out over the most amount of areas possible, and infiltrate it deep into root zones. And that's really the concept we're really trying to get. And that's how we grow these desert sponges, where you can be in these yards here, right here in Phoenix, and it's 100 million degrees outside, and you can hang out outside because there's beautiful shade all around you. You're in these like living ecosystems. We're in an urban area. And most people don't know what I'm talking about because they haven't even experienced that yet. Maybe you have. And maybe you've been in a yard like that and you go, oh my gosh, I want something like this for myself. Because you will spend a lot more time, even in the hot season, outdoors, if you have, yards that are creating these big living sponges full of shade trees and fruit and native plants. And, it's a beautiful vision once you really get into these spaces. Watershed Management Group does home tours once a year, usually, right here in the Phoenix area. Some of our own projects from our clients have been on those tours. Their homes, they've done such great jobs with it that they got on the tour. It's really definitely worth something to check out. Stay tuned when it's usually, I think it's done in the winter time here. So I want to say December, January, just stay tuned for that. Spread and infiltrate. Okay. Slow it, spread it, sink it. All right, always plan for an overflow. This is one of the key rules of rainwater harvesting, okay? Again, we get so used to it, even when it rains, it's not that much. But if you live here in the desert long enough, you will realize that there are massive, massive rain events that can take place here. And if you're a smart guy and you want to live, you're in where you're at for the long term, build your systems to handle the biggest rain events, okay? And this is when you can really start banking moisture in your soil for months and months to come. I mean, in many ways, these rain catchment basins, kind of like you're seeing right here on this slide right here, they are underground water tanks. We have metal tanks, polyurethane tanks, we're storing water, water for human usage. Ultimately the end goal is we're probably watering plants with it. But then we also have water storage within the land itself. And, we'll get into it, but especially when you start incorporating mulching strategies to, you start protecting these basins so that you sink all this water in there and then, protect it with mulch. So back to the overflow and back to this idea of huge rain events that can take place in here in the Southwest, and that if you build your system, meaning you build your basins and even your rain tanks, you build them large enough to handle really good years or huge rain events. So again, so we can bank as much of this moisture as possible, so that when it goes away, and it go back to the dry again, we're just extending the rainy season that much longer. Let me just take a little divergent deal here, and just, it should have been the first slide really. Rainwater is not the same as your city water. Okay, so this the reason why you make this investment and you're in all this is because rainwater is glorious in quality, and our city water is full of salts and chlorines, trace elements of that it's still, the plants still uptake them and still live and can thrive off of it. But especially when you're talking more like annual plants that are soft tissuey root systems that are more sensitive, sometimes they react to the salts and the chlorine in our city water. So our rainwater is perfectly pH balanced. It's like literally has liquid nitrogen in it, dissolved nitrogens in it. I mean, it is an incredible water to if you were all about, really planting your little forest at your house, this water is a really, really vital resource. Okay. So anyway, we could that's a deep topic, look up start really getting into even the science behind rainwater and why it's so important. Okay. Overflow. The point of the big storms is, yes, bank it. But the point of talking about that was, we always have to plan an overflow. Every basin you dig, there should always be a plan for, well, what happens if this thing fills up? And even though it's in the middle of the summer and it hasn't rained in 8 months, and you're like, that'll never happen. Yes, it will happen. In fact, back in 2018, I think it was, there was a tropical storm that came up through the Gulf of California, came right up from southern Arizona and right up through Phoenix. There were parts of South Mountain area where this is we got our very first permaculture customer, was because her house, they had about 3 or 4 inches of rain that had fallen in a 24-hour period up there and just washed out some houses up there. I mean, just devastated, like pushed over cinder block walls, the whole deal. So, this is kind of even how we got into this in many ways, was realizing there are rain events that are massive. And, we ended up building her whole yard to be able to handle one of these kind of rain events. And so granted, we haven't had one of those since then, but you never know when they happen. Never know when they're coming. We're definitely experiencing massive climate weirding and changing going on right now, that whatever the historical weather patterns that we've been enjoying in the Southwest are changing right now. So that could also, not only could it mean potential drought, but it could also mean, more heavy storms and heavy water coming here. So you might as well build your property to handle something like this. Maximize living in organic ground cover. We kind of talked about this with the mulching. So again, these basins, rainwater catchment basins, we are trying to create organic life out of these things. Okay. Now there's many ways to do basins. You can do rock basins where less organic, but rock basins are really good for being able to move water. But mulch basins, on the other hand, even though you are filling the basin up with this volume of material, over time, as you have the interplay between the mulch and the native soils below, and then all the microbiology that takes place, the insect life, that the insects are starting to bore little holes into the native soil, and there's all that action going on, then what happens is you actually create greater percolation rates within those basins from organic basins. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So in the beginning, a rock basin, you technically would have more volume of water that you could fill in. And in the beginning, with a mulch basin, you're filling it with a bunch of mulch. But so in the beginning, you're being able to hold less water. But over time, as that mulch interacts with the soil, you will create, huge a change in the soil below that you'll actually be able to hold even more water than a rock basin would. So again, the point I'm really trying to get at is what we're trying to flip is, your landscaping outside, your yard, or however you want to call it. You're going from like I looked at my yard as something aesthetic only, and it was just there to please me, to now I am a soil warrior. I'm here now I'm going to go through my yard and try to create soil fertility throughout the whole thing. And then when I put plants and trees in, they just magically do really well. What a shocker. And it's because we it's that love of the earth, the love of all life that includes bugs. So many people are like insect phobic and wild and crazy about it. I mean, every 10th car on the road in Phoenix is some pest control company because of people's irrational fear of insects. Well, part of what we're trying to do here is we're bringing the bugs back. But you can create these really balanced ecosystems, especially when you start bringing in the shade trees, bringing in the pollinators. With the trees, you start bringing in bird species. There's a bunch of ground feeding bird species like the curved-bill thrasher that will basically come through your mulch and pick all the bugs out. And so, that doesn't happen overnight, but over time you will create more bugs, but also create this beautiful web, even on a little small bubble in an urban setting. Very cool. So, make that life, y'all, from the soil all the way up to the top of those trees that you're going to grow. They're going to shade you when it's 120 degrees out. Oh, look at that beautiful desert willow, beautiful basin right there, and such a tight little space right next to that building. I don't know this basin, but it's beautiful work. Native pollinators all on the understory, covering the ground in a green mulch. Okay, you don't even need wood mulch because the plants are just doing the job. Their leaf litter becomes that mulch. You can create these areas like this that maybe in the beginning they need irrigation, but over time you can literally cut the cord on irrigation, and this could literally be rain fed. And again, going over those every 1,000 square feet, 1-inch rain event, 632 gallons of water. That looks like a big building. That road's running right by it. Who knows how much water how much water is coming down that road during big rain events. I don't know the story, but you can kind of get the idea of these just beautiful systems that can be created that us humans can kind of set into place, and then boom, and away, step back and just let them go. Now we'll talk about it. It's not that simple, but for the most part it is, and it's really, really cool to see. And after you hear this convo, now next time you drive around Phoenix, look how many spaces are just kind of eroded out, or just no plant life, just maximum heat hitting the ground, magnifying the heat island effect in Phoenix, making it so it barely even rains in central Phoenix and Tempe anymore because it's just so bloody hot down there. So bloody hot, and this because of all the hardscape hell we've kind of created. Granted, there's so many awesome movements going on now, though, of urban forestation. The city of Phoenix is just kicking butt with this. I mean, there's a lot of the municipalities are catching on to this now, just like they had in Tucson. Now it's really about, letting the citizens know here what's up, because we can create a really beautiful urban setting and make it way cooler, literally and figuratively, than it is currently. So I'm glad you guys are here with me. All right, maximize beneficial relationships and efficiency stacking functions, okay? Once you really get into this, you start realizing all the little interplays going on between from water, wind, heat, or air, how it flows through through your yard property, from different plant life, from native plants to fruiting plants to garden plants to all these layers that are happening. And sometimes you have what we call stacking functions, which is which is a principle in permaculture, where take like a mulberry tree. One of the awesome parts of our guy Seamus O'Leary always says everybody should have 3 mulberry trees in their yard, and he is probably close to being right on that. It's one of the best fruiting trees to have in the Southwest. Well, not only does it give you this delicious, freaking unbelievably sweet berry that honestly beats any commercial berry like blueberries, raspberries, all that. It gives you this amazing fruit, but it also can act as, because it's deciduous, meaning it drops its leaves in the wintertime, it can act as a passive solar opportunity. So you put that on the south side of your house, so it's fruiting for you. There's one function. It also it's shading potentially other adjacent trees that don't love the sun as much as a mulberry does. So it can be creating an ecosystem, creating these microclimate builder. And then also with the passive solar ideas, that in the summertime, when you actually we want to heat up the back of our houses, the south sides of our homes here in the Southwest, because guess what? It does get kind of cold here for a couple of months, sometimes we've had Januaries, Decembers that are a little chilly. So it's nice to just heat your home naturally. I can't even believe how many people turn their heaters on here. But if you do it right, and you plant those kind of deciduous trees on the south side of your house, you get the sun in the winter, and then in the summertime you get max shade. So mulberries are awesome shade trees. So again, stacking functions on just one tree, we have 5 or 6 things that it's providing for the whole greater community of your yard. So think about that. Let me make sure. I sometimes can get a little talky, so I want to make sure I'm staying on schedule here. Continually reassess. Oh, okay. Continually reassess your system. Okay. If it all goes great, maybe 10% of the time you do it right the first time, and you never even have to make adjustments after. But the thing about rainwater harvesting in the Southwest is, unless you're really lucky and it rains the day that you finish your project, sometimes you literally have to wait months to see, did my basins work? Did my arroyos work? Is my tank set up right? Does my gutter have leaks in it? You don't really know until it finally rains, right? So, and once you get into rainwater harvesting, this kind of changes your whole lifestyle, if you ask me. You really get into when rain events come. Not only are you excited when they come, not only are you probably going to be outside at 1 in the morning just to see what the heck's going on. You finally get to see it. You'll be there after the next day, looking all around the yard to see where things washed out, where there was more erosion. Maybe you didn't level your basin great, and you thought the water was going to overflow over here, but it ended up overflowing over there. Maybe the force of the water was more than you thought, and whoa, man, I gotta add some more rock here so that it slows the water down. If you're doing any of this kind of work out in where you have seasonal streams coming through your property, where you have more land, and you have more wild lands that you're interacting with, you could be talking massive water flow. So you don't all the way know until you get tested by some big rain events. And we can, everyone knows about flash floods in the desert. Well, it can be torrents out there. So in an urban level, though, even from an urban level, even though we're not dealing with like super fast water, it's still coming down, man. And if you got water, especially you put gutter on your house, before the gutter's there, the water is sheet flowing off evenly over all the roof fascias of your home. Well, when you put gutter on it, now you basically fire hosing all this, again, What if you have one big house? It's 3,000 square feet, and every 1 inch of rain, you have 1,800 gallons of water fire hosing through a 4 inch, maybe 2 or 3 4 inch pipes. So it can be a lot of water coming down some of those downspouts and coming fast. So that's why you need to, build your systems to, again, slow it, spread it, sink it. Okay, you can see here, some erosion issues. Looks like the sidewall of their basin blew out. So it's so fun though. It's so fun to, like, do your first test and then see where you failed, and then, make the changes, and then, man, you can't wait for them to get tested again. And then when you finally have a big rain event and it actually works and no big issues, it just feels, it's awesome. It's a really fun experience. How does water harvesting link to the watershed? I mean, man, if any, shoot, I'm trying to remember what that book is called, but it's a book that basically says the watersheds of all the world are really jacked up, and it's probably, in my own opinion, my guess is it's the destruction of watersheds, meaning where we've stripped off, we've deforested, we've stripped the grasslands, and we've dammed up all the rivers and all the stuff. So there's way less just water being able to infiltrate into the land, causing the land to dry out, making things hotter everywhere. Imagine for half the year when all those soybeans in the Midwest aren't growing and it's just bare dirt, even though it's the winter, that's just all that solar just hitting that and radiating back. I mean, that you can see how humans have kind of created a real big issue. Where we need to fix our watersheds. We need to slow it, sink it, or spread it, sink it, on a very macro scale as well. And we can, people are doing this. You can see these awesome stories on YouTube, or where people have, regenerated land on, much larger scales. They're creating, even in Africa right now, a green wall of native trees to slow down the desertification of the Sahara Desert and the southern region. And because of positive human interactions to the ecosystem, they're actually turning back the deserts. So anyway, I'm just trying to get at that we can make really big change. Humans can be the greatest destroyers, but we can be like the cosmic seed spreaders, man. We could actually make nature is technically better with us if we get our what together. So that's why you're here. I mean, this is why you're here in this class. Probably none of us are managing thousands of acres right now, so all you're managing is your urban, suburban, whatever little plot you got. And if you can do it on that, then who knows, maybe the universe will put more land in your future. So understand these concepts right here, like on the left screen here. Just that's what a beautiful cycle looks like, a water cycle would look like. And then on the right, where our urban areas, where you can see we just have so much water waste because we've just sealed up all the earth. We've created this, imagine all the rain that used to fall on the land that our city sat on, and now it doesn't. What are the effects of that? And what is the effects on our water table and on the watershed itself? And well, we're finding that they can be quite negative. So let's click it on. All right. Yes.
Are you ready for some questions?
Oh man, I'd love some. I wish we were all together, just have that face to face, but this is great nonetheless.
Right. Also, this is an awesome picture. Okay, so these questions are general. I think they're going to help everyone, so I'm going to leave the recording on. Our first question, we are wanting to learn more, thanks to Maureen's question about bioswales. Would you tell us a little bit about those mini stream beds?
Yeah. When I say basin, when I say arroyo, those are basically swales on some level. A swale is a way we're creating basically mounding soil on contour to move water across a landscape elevation. Okay. And that's kind of what a swale is. And where they can also be, a swale in many ways, almost like moving water. And what we're trying to do is move water into basins. And when we say bioswale, that's kind of where you're planting the swale out with organic material, plants, trees, ground cover. You know what I'm talking about. Also, just building the soil underneath those swales. That's what we mean by that. So there's kind of multiple terms because most we're I don't know why I've always I think of swales as more on larger plots of land. In the urban setting, we use a lot of terms like spillways, arroyos, basins. When I say spillway, it usually means like channeling water from one basin to the other. Arroyos are often more like skinnier channels of water to move water, and then basin more of like there's many types of basins. One of the most common basins we're using are the infiltration basins. So a basin that's going to be taking the initial infiltration of the water flow from your roof, okay, or adjacent hardscapes. So yeah, bioswale. What else?
That's great. Thank you so much. So what Clint just told us is that bioswale is one way to move water from the origin spot, which is usually, the roof of your house, to where you want it to go next, which could be visiting plants on its way off of your yard into the street, for example. All right. Another question we had was about the types of mulch somebody could use.
The most common mulch word that we at least use for our business is like a wood mulch, a chopped wood mulch. Again, wood mulch is going to promote that fungal life, especially if you're growing trees. Really nice to and you're kind of starting with and you're just going from real dried out dirt, native clay. Wood mulch is wonderful to kind of like just build the sponge, the ultimate, I always find like the ultimate mulch is, like I alluded to earlier, is like a leaf mulch. So when you actually have the leaves falling from the plants and trees that are there, leaves break down so quickly. I mean, the one thing about wood is it takes a long time for it to break down. But it's still, rock can be a mulch. I mean, it technically is. I mean, mulch can technically just be anything that's covering the ground, okay? The definition of a desert is that there is more evaporation than transpiration. So you and me can't make it rain unless, well, we technically could. If technically foresting 6 acres can technically change the weather, but for all intents and purposes, we can't change the weather, but we can change the amount that gets evaporated off our property. And man, oh man, there's a lot of evaporation happening on even my neighbors where I live, where there's no trees, no plants. It's just hard ground, just getting pounded by the sun every day. And if there was any moisture in the ground, it's gone. Our job then is to cover the ground. So when it rains, or when you turn your irrigation system on, or when your gray water is coming out of your laundry and going into one of your basins, I don't want the Mr. Sun taking that away just yet. Okay. I would way prefer the sun is going to pull it out of the leaves of trees and plants in my yard rather than pulling it off the ground directly. So the whole point of mulching ultimately is to prevent evaporation. And then as a really close second, maybe is to, again, especially when using organic mulches, and there are many types, is to build that soil. Next.
That's great, Clint. Thank you. And important to note that you don't always have to buy mulch. You could make it yourself. So if you are pruning your landscape, save those little pieces, hack them up really small. You can use those as free mulch as long as your HOA does not have a guideline that prohibits that, because then you might get in trouble. Okay.
Stop leaf blowing your yard.
Yeah.
Don't leave.
Collect the leaves. That's free mulch. Okay. Another question. This is more a question I will cover. We have a question about the permit process for residents to implement passive rainwater harvesting techniques in Phoenix. So this is being ironed out a lot and with a lot more detail currently. We're going to be releasing a residential handbook for green stormwater infrastructure, which is another way to say rainwater harvesting. And it will basically tell you what needs a permit and what does not. The thing that's going to qualify your need for a permit is basically how ambitious are you? If you dig a really, really big basin and disturb a certain amount of soil, you dig to a certain depth, you know, a volume of soil is disturbed, you might need a permit. But in most cases, folks are not going to need a permit for a simple basin. Another part of the question was about curb cuts. We are either
I will say too, other than just blue stake, not a permit, but just maybe blue stake
right.
before you dig deep basins, because
Yes. So
even a 1 or 2 foot basin, you could start hitting stuff on, especially on older homes where sometimes they didn't put that stuff so deep.
for sure. So blue staking is using the free resource. Is it AZ511? I think. And you can have them come out and mark buried utilities. And you really want to do that before digging any holes in your yard because you could end up in a dangerous or costly situation. So make sure to check out that free resource, AZ511. The other part of the question was about curb cuts. We are currently developing the procedures for allowing curb cuts, or we are recently completed with it. If any of my stormwater friends in the meeting want to send a link, if they have more updated information, I'm happy to share it with the group. But that process is newly allowed in Phoenix, that curb cutting. So more information to come on how to use that rainwater harvesting method. And somebody tells me that it's 811. I will check what
811.
the
It's
right
811.
numbers are, and I'll send a chat to
I use it all the time.
It's 811.
811.
Okay, sorry, wrong numbers. Okay, I'll send a link anyway. And I think that's it for the questions. I think we're ready to go again. Thank you, Clint.
That's great news about the curb cuts. Curb cuts, again, is the ability to, harvest water from streets and into adjacent basins, even whether they be on your yard or maybe in a public area or whatever. They've done so many of these down in Tucson. And again, we have these basins have been around, curb cuts that have been around a long time. So you can see just year after year of storms filling up these areas and just totally just green in the desert, baby. It's awesome. Hydro local. This is such a cool term. Valuing and stewarding local renewable water resources instead of depleting distant watersheds and rivers. This is a part of the whole insanity of our global thinking where it's okay if you can destroy the natural resource of some other guy in a third world country, as long as it's not in my backyard, it's okay. We got to definitely change the way we think that way. The best way to do it is just get hyper local. Local is kind of the answer to many of the problems we're facing in the world right now. We need to really start focusing back on the areas we live in, and really start thinking about how we can create greater sustainability at local levels. That's what COVID really taught us, right? It was like, wow, our global economic model is crazy because there's essential goods being made and all the halfway across the world. So if things like happen, what if a cataclysm happened? What if there was a massive earthquake, or who knows? The whole world should be striving for more locals. That's what we're after. And part of that is valuing the water where we at, especially here in the Southwest. It's just so vital. We got to really know where your water comes from. I do a YouTube channel called Keep Arizona Wild. I've done some videos there talking about where our water comes from. You got to go check some of that out if you'd like. There's other content out there as well. Just start educating yourself on the greater Arizona watershed. Where's your water coming from? Are those models really renewable? Are we headed towards some a cliff or something? when we're talking about underground water pumping, that for sure is happening. It's happening at a really unsustainable clip. So the more we educate ourselves, the more we're going to be, we'll protect the water that we so depend on. Hydro local, cool term. All right, let's get back to your yards. Okay, so we're talking about that thoughtful observation. You're out there, and then let's start drawing it out. And this is what we do when I go do a consult for a customer. I'll come back to with my Google Earth image, get the rain catchment area, and so I'll measure that roof there and see what or if there's even sheds or any buildings. It doesn't have to just be your house. Any sort of solid roof that's in your yard you can harvest rainwater off of. So draw your property lines, your house, other permanent structures, existing trees and shrubs, and really understand your cardinal directions. It's so vital. I never even thought of this stuff. I was doing regular landscape guy for so many years, and I don't know. I just wasn't in tune as much as I became later. And it's just, I didn't even think about even, the direction of the house that a tree was sitting. It's crazy. So really be aware of that. And then that'll help you also, especially with plant selection. Okay, so the sectors deal with the wild energies from outside our system and pass through it. Okay, intro to permaculture. Again, sun, water, wind, fire, wildlife, pollution, view, utilities, communities. Now, some of those in an urban level we're not really dealing with too much, but a lot of them we are. So we got to really, think of all the elements in your property coming through. Well, it's cool. Here we go. The utilities, 811, blue stake. Here's, they'll come out and mark your yard, and these are the paint colors. The main ones, to be honest with you, most of the utilities are pretty deep. Sometimes the water lines can be run a little low. Now, a lot of times you can even, you should always blue stake no matter what, but even just intuitively know that on most urban Phoenix areas, there's a water meter that's out by the street, right near in your landscape, or right near the sidewalk or the street. And you can usually tell where the main hose bib in the front yard is, and you'll see a pipe that comes up from the ground, and is sometimes a thicker pipe, that's usually your water main. And most of the time, it's a straight line between that water meter near the street to your hose bib, most of the time. But call, and they will make sure you're good to go. Or the community Cox lines oftentimes are really shallow, so they're usually, the Cox guys aren't always digging really deep trenches, so they put them shallow, and so be careful with the orange ones especially. Okay, there you go. Mark them on your map. Sun. Obviously, the solar orientation here is humongous because the sun is so intense, and if you plant the wrong stuff, even if you have a choice to put a tank on any part of your yard, I would pick somewhere like on the east side or the north side that gets the least amount of sun, because I don't want my tank, just getting blown away by the sun all day. So obviously, the side is the part of your yard it's the hottest. The west side after that, because the afternoon sun can be so insanely crazy. After a whole day of buildup and then boom, direct sunlight, west walls of homes. I mean, that should be one of your shadiest parts of your yard, is the west side of your home. East side as well. Sometimes that morning sun can be intense, and then obviously north side is the least sunny. And potentially even parts of your house that never even see sun ever, if especially if there are adjacent shade trees and stuff. So you're going to put there's some things that will not grow in those areas, but there are some things that do love the shade here, even in the desert. And then be thinking about the seasons. This is, again, you're really starting to get in touch with the earth, and thinking of how the seasons change and how the sun sets at different, it's on a spectrum of north and south on the western horizon, okay? Or in the morning, same thing on the eastern horizon. Depending on the year, it's moving up and down, and you got to be thinking about that with your own yard. There's parts in the in the winter time of on the north side of my yard don't really see the sun, and then I kind of plant some super sensitive stuff up there, and then the summer, man, in June when the sun's setting the highest to the north, it just scorches, that little tropical that you thought was going to make it. But man, oh man, 6 o'clock in the afternoon in June, and the sun's like, oh yeah, you didn't think that was coming, but here we go, and that plant's dead. So, you've got to be thinking about the shifting seasons, seasonal shade patterns. You can kind of see that with these pictures. And plan with the sun. Okay, so just thinking about all the microclimates. Hopefully, many of you probably have heard of that term. A lot of the food forest movement here in Phoenix uses microclimate a lot, which is really cool. It's such an awesome concept. It's like of using a larger shade tree. Potentially, even buildings can create microclimates, but the trees make the best microclimates, where a larger tree can then shade smaller adjacent plants around them, and creating kind of these unique environments that, if that shade tree wasn't there, that wouldn't be there. So create lots of little microclimates. That's when you can start getting into planting really fun stuff, and more harder to grow stuff. But build the microclimates first. Don't go throw your avocado tree if you have just bare dirt right now. Okay, you're wasting your money. I know there's a lot of fun fruit trees to grow out there, but you do yourself a lot better if you just go plant. Especially if you're going from nothing. You're going to plant some of the hardy species. Hopefully, if you got enough space, grow some native trees. You can use mesquite really well, and ironwood, palo verde. Those are the three cornerstone native species. Desert willow is an awesome non-thorny native tree that is a deciduous as well, that can create beautiful microclimates, can handle the heat, and then drop the leaves. At least desert willow drop its leaves in the winter and give more sun and to understory. So be thinking about all that. All right, this is a great one. If you take a screenshot of that, this is it right here, the greater watersheds of our state. And it's really important to kind of become familiar with this. I have found for myself, it's not just kind of, neato facto stuff. It's like, like studying these maps and thinking about the greater watershed of our state, thinking about the watershed in your yard, thinking about water. It changes you. I don't know how to explain it. It's a spiritual path in many ways, and it might be kind of like that, focusing on the essentials of life, and understanding them. And we live in this cool technological world now, where we can know all this. We have like hundreds of years of science now to go along with all this. That we live in a great time to have this beautiful awareness, just in time for us to save it, because we've done a bang up job in the past couple decades as a species, and now it's time for us, the ones who can put this material together, who also then now love the earth enough to do this. Understand this stuff, screenshot that, study it. It's really cool. Water is what we're here for. Water, again, man, it's the great life giver, but man, it can also take it away. It's like crazy how you can, heck, if you drink too much water, it'll kill you. And if you don't drink enough, it'll kill you. So, everything is trying to, find that sweet spot, right? So sometimes if you don't build your basins big enough, if you don't build your catchment system big enough, a large storm and just overwhelm it, blow it out, create a lot of issues. So that's why it's good to, before you do this, before you just jump in and start planting. Everyone wants to do that. Most of my consultations, there's some poorly planted tree that my client couldn't wait to put in the ground. We all do it. But if you can wait, that's why it's like having this bigger holistic view, understanding it from a more macro level, and then starting to narrow it in. You're going to probably then plant the right thing in the right space, and then create these water systems through your yard that will optimize everything. So how do we channel the water and move it through the yard? Also, though, noting like hose bib, we're talking a lot of rain, but I'm originally an irrigation guy. You really got to understand too where the irrigation's laid out, where the hose bib, the actual water source lines are, where your water meter, like we talked about earlier, just understanding how your water, your city water works, and then in conjunction with your drainage water, rainwater, and then potentially even gray water. And there's that coefficient. Multiply square feet by 0.623. Write that down wherever you're at. That's a fun one. Then after this, go look your house up on Google Earth, figure out the total square footage and multiply it by that. You'll have a lot of fun. And then do your whole yard and then realize how much water is dropping every year. You live in the Phoenix area. We average 8 inches a year. Maybe that number's I think it might be more like 7 something now, but either way, we have some good years, we have some bad years. If you do it out long enough, it averages out to a little under 8. Sectors and factors. Sectors deal with the wild energies from outside our system and pass through it. Okay, just like we talked about, all those elements, and then you can map that out on there as well. Emily, do you want to question again, or what do you want to do? You want to keep plowing through?
We don't have questions like new ones. Just talking to people about which watershed we're in, sending links. But yes, we can keep going.
Awesome. How? The passive earthworks. Okay, so again, slow spread sink. Oftentimes when we think of rainwater harvesting, we think of like the tanks, and I love tanks. I love putting them in people's houses too. But I would say the thing that I'm the most into is this one, the passive earthworks. Here in the desert, basically the idea of a basin is just create holes in the ground that hold the water, as opposed to have them running off the landscape. So, and if you dig these basins to handle the biggest storms, we can store a lot of water, as I've already brought up. So check out Brad Lancaster's book if you really want to get into doing basins. His second volume focuses on basins, and it's a really good read. And here you go. Here's a bunch of the different types of basins. And the different types of basins are based on like how the water's coming in, and how is it, what surface it's coming out of. Is it coming over like a sheet flow? Is it coming out of a fire hose? All those kind of things. And then land adjacent to it, how if we have the room, the space, this is how we would look at this and choose the right basin for the right situation. Swales, we had talked about that as well. Conveyance, moving the water through the land. That's what swales do, but they would do them in a controlled, slow way. So fast water equals fast erosion. So we can slow that water where it's kind of like, imagine pouring water down a slide, and then imagine pouring the water into descending cups. Okay. Just one to the next, and that's kind of what we're doing, just moving it down through the topography of your landscape slowly. Okay, there you go. See how that looks? There you go. Not all water transfer has to be like a mulch thing or a rock, heavy rock. They can just be depressions in the land themselves. Okay, you can do water harvesting swales on a quarter-minus driveway. Okay, by doing this photo where it's just little speed bumps in the driveway to where the car easily drives over it, barely notices it, but when it rains, the water isn't overwhelming certain areas and can just move across slowly, and then into like there a basin that's coming over right next to the wall there, and then more where the landing pad is kind of that heavy rock, so in case there's a lot of water coming over that. And from time to time, maybe some of that quarter-minus there will wash over, so there'll be a little maintenance for the humans to kind of move that quarter-minus back up the slope. But it's nice little features you can use, strategies. Infiltration basins. This is really infiltration basins, especially when we're dealing with downspouts from gutters. we use these a lot with the work that we do at Galaxy Gardens. I want, especially at the initial landing pad for that water to hit, slow it down, and then somewhere where I can deep sink it. These infiltration basins are where you're going to do the massive plantings within the basin or around the edges of the basins. And you can, you got to be careful sometimes about what plants you put inside of deeper infiltration basins, because there are some plants that don't love sitting in water during super rainy, wet times. So you got to be a little careful about that. And then, but the idea though is to put that water and then sink it deep in the ground. Imagine all the, that desert willow on the right is a really happy tree. Probably was only 2-3 years old and it's already pretty big. But for any of you growing fruit, this is an ultimate strategy of planting fruit trees on the high side, though. We don't want to put them at the bottom, but high side and adjacent to these basins, so that their roots just start sinking into that basin and underneath the basin, especially over time. Imagine infiltration basin handling decades of storm events, and those plants and trees are going to be the most happy guys in town. There you go. There you go. This is where it started. Project that they had done. There you go. You can see the basins that they made, a series of basins where, one infiltration basin, the water pours in, fills up, and then goes through the overflow, maybe another arroyo, and then to another adjacent basin. We've done, some of the projects we've done on an urban level. We did a project in Tempe that won the WaterWise Award. It was 7 interconnected basins. Just fill one, transfers over to the next, and yeah, most of the storms doesn't make it to the last basin, but the 10% of the storms do. And our clients send us videos, and all the basins are filled, and it's just it's exciting stuff. And then I go back and all the plant life is just going nuts. So it's really neat to see. So here you go, this project, look how beautiful that is. We spread all that organic mulch over top. The contour is there again to handle all that, even adjacent water coming off the driveway. So it's really neat. It's a really cool job that they did out there. Planted it out. Here's another one. Gosh, doesn't that look like a house you've seen right here in like Tempe or Phoenix? Boom. Get rid of the grass, create the basins, deck it out with looks like some sage and some yucca, and it looks like an ironwood or palo verde over there. Cover it with some organic mulch. Just great job. Looks much fresher, newer, nicer, much better than before. And gonna bring in the wildlife too. Here we go. Maybe this is another good one to take a screenshot of. Just to really envision what we're talking about here. One of the great plants to plant at the bottom of the basin are more of these grasses. A lot of grasses can sit in water for a long time. So there's a lot of beautiful native grasses, even like the pink muhly grass, which is a real stunner, kind of adjacent deserts as well. But you can kind of really see the cross-sectioning, how that works. And that's what you're trying to create in your yard. And then over time, I'm telling you, when you do this, and over time you go back and you peel back the mulch in your basin after a couple of years of this, and you see the transformation that's taken place underneath, it's going to make you giddy. So get ready. Slopes and soil retention. Rise over run. We don't want to go over 3-to-1. Otherwise you need to start tiering, where you're going to do more creating terraces as opposed to other means to slow things on slope. A lot of what we're dealing with in the suburban area is very flat. Here in Phoenix, maybe you live up in the Scottsdale area or Northeast Mesa, or they're obviously around the edges of town. We have mountain, more slopey spots, but a lot of the Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, Chandler, we're dealing with a lot of flat ground. So then it's just really a matter of just creating these beautiful, concave compressions in the ground and let them hold that water. All right. See, they're planting them out with those yellow bell Tacomas, which are technically a native. There's that curb cut right there. You can see the little hole in the curb, and just look how much water. And it looks like the curb's dry, so it's that water potentially has been sitting there for a while, unless they put a hose in it just for the picture. But you get the concept. Raised berms. You can as you excavate your basins, you can keep it on site and then create larger contouring. So we raise the elevation in certain areas as well, creating those berms and swales that this one right here is receiving, I think, receiving water from under that wall. And then it's coming into that basin and then hitting into that kind of boomerang berm. As a great way to just, man, you can sink a lot of water in that. And then the overflow of that bermed basin would probably be a little to the right there. Just slowly start sheet flowing down the hill there into the next one. It looks like there's another one down there on the right. So kind of getting that tiered cup idea. There you go. See the water. There's another one. Oh, that was it from the beginning. Very cool. I mean, man, there's so many yards that look like this, and the catchment opportunities. Here we go. Some more just beautiful examples. Pathways. We're raising pathways, okay, because we want pathways to stay dry, and we also want pathways to shed into adjacent basins. So then even the square footage of your pathways can be opportunities to hit your tall pathway and then sheds off to lower growing areas that are base areas to sink water. There you go. See how that water flows. And then once you cover the ground, sometimes it's hard to see what you did, but water will move through mulch. And maybe you can't all the way see it once you cover it, but when you're part of these projects and you get to see it, you can, what's going on underneath the mulch and where the water will move. And again, if you look at a river, there's no rivers that are just straight. All rivers are very serpentine, okay? It's just bouncing back and forth. And that's the object really with your yard is how can I take my gutter, funnel it through my roof water through there, and then move it through as much of my yard as possible, snaking through, hitting this plant, this tree, and this plant, this tree, and trying to hit everybody so we get the free irrigation. There's another house. Everyone's seen the house like that. Beautiful basin. Acatillo is the centerpiece. Look at that. That's cool. Beautiful. And that's what it looks like when it fills up. I mean, it's a happy day. You'll be out there swimming in your basins. Free swimming pool. Organic versus inorganic. Mulch floats. So mulch basins are cool. I love them. They come. Everything has trade-offs in life. Okay, so with rock, you're going to have way less of that the mess in a sense, but you'll also you miss out on a lot of the organics benefits of the organics. So if you're moving water, if water's moving fast, you do not want to use mulch. Okay, this is where we really want to use rock. I mean, these are the materials that we use by far the most with the work we're doing. Mulch, heavy rock, even small quarter minus. And then less and less of the gravel. So, but there are still ways to repurpose gravel, like they did with that basin there on the right. That you don't have to go throw it all away if you don't want. Oftentimes we do actually move a lot of rock off people's yard because they just want to start over and get that organics going. There you go, cool group of people working together. Sizing earthworks capacity, another slide that'd be worth checking out. And again, get the book so you can get all the calculations, but there's a basin. Shoot, I just posted it on our Facebook like a couple weeks ago, the equation for basin calculation, just to there's ways to kind of figure out the sizing of your basin to manage the amount that's coming off your roof. Ensure water will percolate again within that first day. So percolation rate method, surface area needed to infiltrate peak volume water or peak water volume based on percolation rate and discharge volume. Plant needs, again, making sure that we're putting them in the right spots within the basins, really important. Sizing for stormwater retention, especially these city managers that are actually putting in these large, catch basins. There are good water catchment practices being used. They are definitely taking the math and figuring out how much of what is their catchment area and how big of a holding space they will need for it. And here you go. There's a runoff coefficient, meaning it's not always like you're going to collect every 100% of the water that falls off of your roof will not land in your gutter. Some water hits your gutter, splashes over, falls on the ground, and is lost. So there's some absorbs into the roof material potentially. There's little parts that are lost, and then obviously as you go through the surface areas, obviously there's hard surface, and even that you don't collect it all. Obviously porous surfaces, you're not going to catch it all either because the water gets absorbed. So this is a cool thing to check out and have. So here we go. There you go. There's the I forgot that it was on here. Okay, so remember the 3 elevations. So we're considering utility lines. We're going to try to keep our, those are usually within 2 to 10 feet, meaning, underground. Structural foundations. We do want to try to avoid putting basins too close to structures. Probably 10 feet's the wisest choice. I have participated and seen ones a little closer, but for sure no closer than 5 feet. Be careful about that. So the 3 important elevations you can see on that photo there. The overflow spillway is the low point of the earthwork perimeter. Okay, so you're going to build the ridge of your basin, and then at the very, at some point you'll create one little part that's a little lower. So again, that your water can hit and then come out. The spillway is low enough to ensure nothing is accidentally flooded. There you go. Meaning make sure that the spillway is the overflow spillway. So we're going to move the water out of the infiltration basin over top of that spillway. We want to make sure that's lower than any other point so that the water isn't coming out the wrong end. And then that the basin is lower than the elevation of the spillway to ensure water is harvested rather than drained, right? So if your basins are too tall, then the water will just keep moving. So again, we want to slow it by sinking it into a deeper area and then let it rise up and then move out. There you go. Water level, uneven ground. There's ways you can, the bunyip is a tool that you can use to kind of figure that out over, we've actually used this on some sloped area. Pretty cool method. Toolbox, passive features. I mean, even in a world full of high tech, these are the main tools we're using for water harvesting. I highly recommend that, if you really get into this, you could even get into buying like a power hammer to be digging holes. Power hammer is like we use a Makita, but it'll have a spade bit on it, and you can dig trenches and dig holes and dig basins pretty quickly with them. So if this is something you can do it with picks, no doubt. And if you're just going to do a smaller project, don't spend money on expensive tools. But if you really want to get into it, or if you have a large property and you plan on doing a lot of this, then a power hammer is a worthy investment as well, combined with all those hand tools you see there. Vegetation, these are all native plants. Part of the vision here is, again, we're going to try to create food for ourselves, medicine for ourselves, shade for ourselves, and then also bring wildlife habitat. Now, most of us living in the city, you're probably not going to get, big giant mammals coming into your yard, but the ones that we really attract are the pollinator species. And man, it is so fun when you start. If you build it, they will come. If you plant native species, again, the reason why native, they've been evolving here for thousands of years, and the pollinators know those plants the best. And most likely, it's native plants just have like more sugar in their pollen. A lot of these ornamentals that have been kind of crafted in labs, if you will, they don't. Have you ever seen bees covered on a lantana bush? Neither have I. I mean, I don't hardly. I've been outside my whole adult life here in Phoenix, and when's the last time you saw bougainvilleas being, pollinated? It's a great plant still. It does a great job out here, but it has less value in terms of the whole spectrum. Bringing in pollinator life. And that's not only birds, bees, butterflies, dragonflies, tarantula hawks, other just moths. It is fun, man. And you start planting this. I've my own house. I've 3 years into it, at least where I'm at, and we finally starting to see the butterflies that are having their babies there, and they're just blowing up in my yard, and they're all over the place, and it's really really neat to have them there, and for those that are really into fruit, well, there's not really a lot of ground cover fruit. There's not even that many low lying fruiting shrubs that do very well here. So the shrub layer within the forest, okay, the ground cover, the lower shrub layer, the higher shrubs and then the smaller trees to the upper canopy with large shade trees, you're trying to fill those spaces. Well, especially when you're talking the lower ground cover level and the shrub layer, native plants are an awesome way to fill in your forest and to bring in that full spectrum of life. Fruit trees need to be pollinated too, and there's no way better to attract them than by putting these native pollinators underneath there. And the color is unbelievable. Aesthetically, they're just so beautiful. There's almost every month of the year, almost there's a native plant that's blooming. You can really get into this. I mean, I'm always selling people on, hey, let me get rid of your front yard lawn that you never use, and let's put in a butterfly garden in there. This is a great way to just ditch the old and bring in the new, and then man, if you'll see pollinators flying everywhere, and it's really our way, and especially since we're so nature deprived in the city, it's a really great way to like just get your soul connected to nature right in an urban setting, especially when you have all this habitat going on. Caution, flooding, slowing roof runoff, okay? Ponding, standing water risks, mosquitoes. Let me just get them all up on the screen, okay? These are all the things you do got to worry about. Again, we've kind of alluded to a bunch of these, and I know we're kind of short on time, so let's just go through that one. Maintenance. It's not just pure set it and you're done. I mean, we're always cleaning out our filter baskets on our tanks, and even when you have gutters with screens on them, I mean, the material sits on the top and potentially could be affecting the water going in. So there's always just kind of cleaning your gutters out, cleaning your basins out after storms, all this stuff, and then going through making sure that the water is doing what it's supposed to. And it's really fun to work in your yard when you build one of these kind of yards. And there we go. There's the Watershed Management Group. Questions? Thank you guys. I hope you've lasted this long.
Hey, we did it. All right. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Clint. So the first question we had was about incentives that Phoenix offers. And I sent a chat with our page. Everybody wants to know about the grass removal incentive. It's coming for residential customers. It exists for non-residential customers, but it will be here soon. So bookmark that page and keep your eye out. Hopefully before the end of winter 2025. And if that sounds cryptic, it's because we're still working on it. So just watch out. Otherwise, we have a smart irrigation controller incentive right now and a high efficiency toilet incentive. So you can find that on that page. No pool incentives in Phoenix. That was another question we just got. Okay, Another,
Emily, have you heard of?
yeah,
I've heard rumors of tank rebates. Have you, of like more at a state level? Have you heard anything about that?
of what? What rebates?
Water tank rebates. A lot of ways to go about, removing Bermuda. To be honest, the one that we use is I come in with a skid steer and I scrape it out. I mean, that's like the most common way we do it. We just physically remove it. If you're doing a mulch yard, then it becomes really easy to kind of keep it at bay. I mean, or much easier. How about that? You never know. Bermuda is a son of a gun and can be really tricky to, when it's been there a long time, and especially in sunny areas and areas that are going to get water again thereafter. So you got to be real careful. But there are ways to do it. You can, solarize, putting plastic over it for, weeks at a time, things like that. That'll do it. That you can avoid spraying Roundup on it is what the object is. And my guess is if you're in a rainwater harvesting webinar, you're not like really a big, glyphosate fan. So, there are ways to do it without dealing with that. And to be honest, just physically digging it out. If you got it, if you can do it yourself, or you have some budget to hire somebody to do it, just a great way to just be done with it and then get on to the next. Now, to keep it at bay though, you're gonna have to cover it up either with heavy rock or mulch is by far the best. And then overall with a shade plan, because grow out the plants that you're wanting to, so that Bermuda does not grow in the shade though. It does not like the shade. So if you can kind of forest your front yard or wherever the grass was, uh, as your ultimate strategy, and then pull that grass. It definitely comes back. The people where it comes back all the way are the people that are lazy and don't go out there and keep pulling it. Okay, the people who stay on it, they get rid of it. I've seen people succeed. I've seen people not succeed, and I can kind of tell the people who don't succeed are not really doing the maintenance. You got to get out there, pull it. Eventually, that grass runs out of energy and does just kaput and stops growing. You know, if you put a thick layer of mulch on it too, it will really, really, keep it at bay.
So I'm hearing smother your grass if you don't like it anymore. And remember that it's literally invasive. So it's going to be hard to get rid of it. Um, Another question we had was about when you should incorporate kind of larger hardscape materials like a boulder or riprap versus going with more, literal dirt earthworks. Some of the designs, the question from Sam is asking about why some designs had those elements, like the bigger elements, and some of them didn't.
So the ones who did, there was a couple of those, like that one that was all mulched. The one issue about digging deep basins and then not not putting like a heavier rock on it is over time they will erode in. Okay, it's gonna happen. Personally, a lot of the work we do with my business, I love rock. One, it's aesthetically very pleasing when you build these beautiful, like the one here in the photo on the thank you page. You can see like that rock work on the side walls of the basins is very nice. That costs some extra money to do, of course, but the side walls of the basins will not erode in, unlike the more rounded, kind of gradually just flowy ones, which they still will function, but they'll potentially be more maintenance of, over time having to move the eroded parts back up the hill again. So if you want to just go, heavy rock also is very vital for, again, high flow water. So coming out of a downspout, like if you just have a downspout, boom, you don't throw your mulch right there. That's a bad idea. Give it a runway, put a bunch of, heavy rock there, a nice, beautiful spillway, slow it down and then have it slowly trickle into a mulched area. And again, anywhere where we have like high vertical slopey spots, heavy rock is where it's at. And rock is just aesthetically awesome and beautiful. It's like, I don't love gravel, but I do love boulders and riprap. And I think they incorporate so well with what we're doing, and they're very functional and very beautiful. Boulders, I mean, they're just such cool seating spots. Like They're stacking functions. You can hold up a hillside with a boulder and kind of, they do find that when you plant around boulders, that when it rains near boulders, that moisture is held in the ground near boulders than just out in open areas. So boulders do technically, it's a gigantic mulch in some ways, and they're just so beautiful too. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think that was a great explanation. Basically, if we are thinking that there's going to be a big, strong flow of water, your mulch is subject to going away with the water. So heavier materials, strategically, we know they cost a little more unless you have a free boulder pile somewhere. But it's worth it to maintain your passive features.
You can do all this on a very low budget. There's that. And if you got some cheddar to spend, you can do this in a very functional and looks like super awesome. So, there's a spectrum. If you got a low budget, man, you can still there's always someone giving away stuff. There's, free river rock or free this, free that. You can be repurposing. Some people use like broken concrete as a urbanite. They call that urbanite. You can use that. So, I actually love those systems too. It's like the super efficient, mega cheap version of these. And then the one where if you got the, the big baller version where it's, you can spare no expense and use all the most expensive stuff. But either way, they're both functional.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Clint. If everybody could send a little emoji just to tell us if you enjoyed this webinar. If you are free Thursday night, I'm going to be back here with my friend Kaylee Coulter. We're going to talk about selecting native plants for multiple benefits. This is one of my favorite classes. That will start again at 6 p.m. And there's a companion worksheet too. So check out your email invitation. It's hidden in there somewhere. Otherwise, I'll send it in the chat again.